Today, these lectures were quite inspiring, very interesting, but also, in a sense, provoking thoughts and confirming my strong belief that public space for an architect is not a typology. You know, it's kind of a media that connects all typologies. It is a type of physical situation that transcends the physicality of architecture and kind of connects all this multitude of issues that were actually talked about today. Yeah, I was director until 2013 of Platforma 981. It's a kind of a just briefly. It's important to say that it's one of the proofs how precarious is to organize and maintain the type of architecture practice that decides to condemn itself to deal with this type of issues and always operating on the brim of existential crisis, so to speak. But nevertheless, I think the most exciting experiments and most of my knowledge I actually didn't know, didn't learn in faculty, but I actually got to know through working in this organization that I started with 3 people in 2000. One thing I would like to say before I actually get to a couple of projects that I wanted to show you today is that I'm always kind of surprised that we have these tendencies to glorify and to look on culture, on public spaces that were built in the 60s and 70s with a type of naivety and nostalgia, and claiming that they were like super advanced and better than we have today, and also having these tendencies to look down upon everything that is being done and produced in physical environment today. Because if we are sober enough and critical enough to realize that there were some crucial corrosive tendencies that were happening and that started to happen in the Western society, in the Western modern society, in the 50s and 60s, that actually resulted in the type of public spaces that we have today. Because architecture and physical space is a very, very slow medium, and it's a very low frequency. What actually happens probably 30 or more years before, it's what happens in the realm of ideas. And those ideas that actually produced those good quality public spaces in the 60s were actually the old ideas from the beginning of the century. And in the 60s and 70s, in the Western society, there are some very, very harmful corrosive tendencies that started to happen that resulted in this kind of public space that we have today. Namely, the commodification, the complete erasure of public sphere, the fall of public man, the incapacity of the citizens to think outside of its particular own interest. It was very funny for me today to see the quote that Ethel showed from Manuel Castells, and I think I know where the quote was took, and I know for sure that 15 years ago, before that quote, Manuel Castells, studying at the Paris 5 University, actually proved scientifically that citizens of the Western metropolis are only interested in the consumption of urban standards. So for the citizens of today, as it was proven 50 years ago, the more important thing is that whether the elevator functions or whether the shopping mall is close to his or her apartment, than whether the benches and the green environment is maintained around the building. Probably at the same time, in the 60s, the big crisis in architecture also started to happen. I think that the architecture as a kind of materialization of utopia reached already its climax by the end of 60s. Okay, so utopia was built actually globally. You know, you could see this international style, new housing estates, you know, new building. It was built, and after that, already we as architects started to feel some kind of lack of inner purpose. What is there to be done for us anymore when we have already built the utopia? And I think that this kind of inner void within the profession, which was carefully and continuously and stubbornly and naively hidden from all these years, is actually something that had brought us the way we are right now. Because I think that we are masking or falsifying our professional agenda. And most probably, some practices that are and will be shown today, and many, many other practices of architects and other practitioners that try to deal with public space around the world, are the practices that they are trying to unlock this intellectual, creative impasse. You know, we are trying to somehow to find the way through. And I think everybody that tries to run its architecture practice, that is living from architecture practice, is very well aware of how difficult this is. So what I'm going to show you today are a couple of projects of ours that are in a way very, very opportunistic. And I called my title is Whatever Works, because I remember one time when our office had enough money to employ people, and we organized the application for the jobs, and then we had interviews with the forerunners. And then one applicant asked us to show her our projects and to explain what is exactly that we do, why we do it, what is architecture in it, and whatever. And when we go through it, she said, "Oh, it's the whatever works," because very, very little in these projects could be actually labeled as architectural. Whether it is lobbying, advocacy, media activity, graphic design, PR, carpentry, physical work, nothing goes into this toolkit that is learned in the architectural school. So when I say whatever works, you know, and it's opportunistic, I don't mean to say that the goal justifies the way you reach the goal, but I just wanted to say that I think in the circumstances of today, especially after the today crisis, I think what does matter is producing some kind of special effect. And if doesn't matter what it is done with. And it's important to understand that us as architects are primarily intellectuals. You know, we are not cat monkeys, we are not engineers, we are not technologists, we are all that. But first of all, we have to be intellectuals. We have to think really why, what for, and for whom we are doing this. So a couple of projects that I will show you. To understand them, it's important to see this. Some 13 years ago, we started mapping the city of Zagreb. It was a kind of a desire, you know. It was not a project that started programmatically, but when you have a city that just got out of the war and just got out of the socialism and experiencing tremendous and abrupt social transformation, I mean, this transformation and shifts has to be felt on the city fabric. And what we started is the mapping of the city disused, abandoned spaces. Mainly industry, but not only industry. Urban voids, unfinished buildings, junkyards, public cinemas that lost their function because of the multiplexes and open-air cinemas, never finished private investments, interstitial spaces, you know, some spaces that are never meant to be used, even though having a clear border and some kind of ambience quality. And once we did that, we actually devised some kind of as a database of these spaces, keeping track of what's happening with the spaces, what are their special qualities, what is the condition of the built fabric, what are the possible future ambitions of the owner of the space or of some possible buyers of the space, everything that we could reach. Of course, digging into the historical archives and stuff like that. So the first map was produced in 2004, and once we produced this map, we started organizing very, very short temporary visits to the spaces, which pretty soon started to turn into temporary occupations. Big, small, occupying space only with light. So at the time, this is important for the next project. So at the time, around 2005, we started operating as some kind of a illegal non-for-profit real estate agency. We had the data of the spaces. Cultural, non-institutional cultural scene was pretty aware of our knowledge in this. We published the database occasionally in the printed form only, but we didn't want to publish it on the web to be open to everybody. But whoever called us, we met them and took them to the space. So we were like behaving as some kind of a, you know this stalker character from the Tarkovsky's movie, because it was important to us to see the potential user of the space and to start it to enter the space of negotiation with him or her. And pretty soon we have almost like 2 million square meters of space in Zagreb, of inner space. 2 million of inner space, and mostly owned by the city or the government, because privatization in Zagreb didn't happen yet. But of course, there were some private spaces as well. And now I'm going to show you a couple of examples. How did we use the map? Zagreb Fair, built in the 60s, was one of the biggest storage of this, of this recycle bin of the city, of this abandoned city junkyard. Because after the war, Zagreb Fair started to stop to exist, you know, and didn't actually activate until the beginning of new millennium. And lots of these pavilions were actually empty. What we were commissioned, so to speak, to do is to do a setup for the young art salon, which was actually in need of space and didn't know where to go. And on the other hand, there was absolutely no money for the setup. So it was like seemingly impossible situation. What we realized then, that this on the top, on the right, what you see, that at the time we have the building industry that is completely bankrupted, that at the time we have ex-Yugoslavian railways, Croatian railways, that were also possessing a huge amount of infrastructure, shipping containers and trains that were either in Croatia stored in the middle of nowhere or in Bosnia. And we also had Croatian military that just got out of the war, having an enormous manpower and infrastructure capacity without having nothing to do. So what we did is that we went shopping, so to speak, into these junkyards of building industry, choosing parts of the old machine cranes and stuff like that. Croatian military was transporting this, and Croatian railway gave us 40 ship containers that were transported from Sarajevo. And what we did in the terms of our design was really nothing. I think that the crucial stage of design was realizing this. We got the infrastructure, we got the logistics, how to transport it, and then we just did the normal thing. We just did in the space something that looks like a railway. So it's this 10,000 square meters huge Zagreb Fair hall that was built out of the shipping containers. Each artist got his container. And the message was very, very also strong. And in a sense also it was not our deliberate decision, you know, because when you have an old wrecked ship container, the message of a young artist that does not have a place to exhibit, to get this shabby old container is like the most simple and the strongest message that could be communicated through media. And that's it. Some of the artists were actually sleeping in the containers because it was winter and the hall was heated. And let's say our addition was to build everything as a huge public space. So in between these containers, we had place for the Zagreb NGOs that didn't have actually place to work. We had a place for skaters. We did a little square. So it was kind of a temporary public environment, climatized in January, that was actually functioning for a couple of months. Second project that I will show you is actually done I mean, all of these projects were not done by us. It was done in collaboration with others. You know, we cannot claim the authorship in this project. We cannot claim an authorship on a single aspect of the project. So I just wanted to be clear in that. It was done with the Zagreb non-institutional cultural scene and with the block that Anna just presented you some of their projects. So it was actually labeled as a part of the urban festival. We inhabited for a couple of weeks an old liquor factory in the center of the city. And what we did after a thorough inspection of the space and building a model is that we dismantled the model in front of the non-institutional Zagreb scene, and everybody chose their own space. They went there, they saw the spaces, and they were kind of, shopping for the space, and then they inhabited. So it was like 3 weeks, 130,000 people, exhibitions, sewing cooperatives, philosophical education, do-it-yourself courses, VJ workshops. This is a big brother for sheeps, and an artist from Croatia did this. All sorts of infrastructure taken from different sites and turned into a temporary environment. The third one is, I will just go through it briefly. I'm going to jump over some of these images to show you. This is an old abandoned cinema in the downtown of Zagreb. We were inspecting and researching downtown of Zagreb and the decay of vitality and the public space in the downtown of Zagreb for 5 or 6 years now. The abandoned cinema was first squatted by us and used temporarily for different occasions. Then we managed to give a temporary contract with the governmental organization that was managing the space, actually only holding a key, not maintaining in any sense. And then after we entered, we organized a quite complex, seemingly from this image, but actually very simple organizational structure of the space that consisted of the school that is actually 200 meters from the cinema. They didn't have the gym, that the society of neighbors from the neighborhood, the society of football club fans, the local council of the downtown of Zagreb, and us as some kind of a holder. And we actually pretty soon realized that it's not going to function unless we move our office on the balcony. So in 3 years we operated from there, having our office on the balcony and having this Mosor cinema as our main project. But our office, which is 4, the red one on this image, all the rest of the space was actually used as a community center. Retired people playing cards, having all the time retired people living room, taking care of kids, having kids festivities, having people from the neighborhood coming in their slippers to show their movies. Like anything, It was really, we really had no program profile, It was just put to use. The project still goes on, and we are negotiating with the owner, which actually became an owner after we got into the space. The owner is actually the granddaughter of the guy that lost the cinema after the Second World War because he was collaborating with the Nazis. So the cinema was expropriated from him by the communists. Now she claimed the ownership and she got it back. Luckily for us, there is a crisis, so she cannot sell it at the price that she wants. And on the other hand, she's living in LA, being a film producer, so obviously not in the desperate need for money. But we are right now in the situation where we trained for the past 2 years. We trained an NGO of young culture NGO that is taking care of the space, running it, and we are negotiating with her about possible future uses, experimenting with the existing uses and slowly introducing the new ones. The last example that I'm going to show you is a recent example of the project is started last year. I would like to call it an ongoing project, even though it's not easy to tell how far it will go. But nevertheless, at the outskirts of Zagreb, there was an old derelict market that was actually not used anymore, and these old concrete benches were actually danger for the kids playing around, and also very impractical for the using of this space. So what we did is propose to the local council to start a series of activities, including research, including education, including, when I say research, anthropological and sociological research, before any kind of other urban research, but urban research included as well. Participation with the local and model making of the one-to-one model on the site to see what could be the future use of the space. What we got so far is that we managed to demolish the old benches and top up and put the new asphalt. So what we did actually so far, the only visible result is that we created a new surface. And from time to time, we watch what's happening there. Commercial activity, which was existing even before, now have started to grow a little bit. And of course, kids are playing much more on the spot. But since the politicians, the local politicians, are kind of not in favor of this kind of power to the people, in a sense, way of approach, are trying in any sense to, through their influences to the mayor, to block our activity. So we don't know what's going to happen. Last year, for 2 terms, kids from the local elementary school did their ideas about the square, actually made their urban furniture and models, which was nice. And a thorough anthropological and sociological research, which results we still expect, but so far we find some very interesting conclusions from this. For example, we find out that the same people that actually go to the public kitchen that is placed on the square are the ones that actually are so ashamed of them going to the kitchen that they don't want for the kitchen to be there. No, this kind of funny paradoxes. Or for example, we realize that people are convinced that the square is only belonging to this neighborhood of Lower Dubrava, while on the other hand, 50% of the people coming to the market is actually coming from the Upper Dubrava. Or that 90% of the people think that politicians are the main reason why the space is at the situation where it is right now. So basically, it's quite interesting to be there. We also opened our temporary office there, only on behalf for the cause of the project, last spring and summer, and talking with people and thinking with them, helping them to answer the questions on the survey really got us very much to think about how people perceive public space, what they think about their identity, how does the public space is connected to their identity, and so on and so on. I will stop here saying that all these so-called whatever work practices and referring to what has been said today about the way we plan the processes, negotiate, withdrawing from this master position of the architect, controlling time differently, you know, seeing the position of an architect more as some kind of a midwife, you know, than as a than the actually the creative genius that has to deliver the blueprint, the final design. It really reminds me on the kind of philosophical concept of Gianni Vattimo, of his critique of modernity and the whole concept of pensiero debole, the weak thought. So I think that what today's architect, or at least the architecture as I see it, or as I was forced to learn through working on these kind of projects, is really a weak architecture. For me, this is the kind of metaphor that really synthesizes this approach, where you are giving up on the professional efficiency and virtuosity of the profession and embracing the kind of almost amateurism. Jumping into activity that you really, not that you are never been trained in, but you are actually do not know where are they going to take you. Not to mention the whole question of how we work, with who we work, why we try to leave the end open-ended process, why we actually never finish. Why most of these projects, I mean, all of these projects that I show you today are actually long-term projects. You know, they are not the projects that you are like you are commissioned to do. You do it, you get money, and you leave to the next project. You are always doing it. This is something that used to exist in the 30 years in Zagreb, where the structure, where administrative structure of the city was really different, and where every council had their own urban department, where you have an urbanist, an architect, as a kind of local doctor that was taking care of the immediate situation in the. You don't have this anymore with all this centralized organization of the city. And I think you know, in a sense, my uncle was an accountant, and he drove this Beetle, you know, this VW Volkswagen car, and he was very proud to himself because he, as an accountant, was able to repair the Beetle. There is no way that today we can repair our own car. The same is with the city, you know. I think that the city government, in a sense today, is so intransparent, so chaotic, so in a way, you know, the layers of mediators, you know, of translators, of protocols, of urban rules, all of these, you know, mechanisms that are actually blocking us to see what is behind the machine. So I think that this kind of approach, that is as many of you stated today, that are from the bottom, that are small scale, capillary, are actually hands-on, you know, experience. Just like a colleague from Berlin showed before, the way that they built in Torino this wooden structure, you know. I mean, from this film, it is obvious that they actually were designing it in the same time when building it, you know. These kind of projects are actually bringing us in touch with the situation. In that sense, they are good. And I think that we can really learn a lot from them. I'm not sure how far how really far they can push us, but I'm pretty sure that as an architect, it gives you the sense of this social experience, because I really believe that architecture should really be done as a social experience. I mean, in all stages of the process, total socialization of architecture, from the design to the building site. I think when you take local subjects or actors or whatever you like to call it through this process openly, giving them the opportunity to participate in the process as designers, you helped in them, not trying to mystify it, the professional expertise, because it's very, very simple. All of these projects are on the brim of materiality. You know, they are very, very light. So you're not building a hospital or something. You know, you don't have to be an expert to that point. But if you take the actors through all this process and socialize it from the very beginning, from the first sketch, from the first idea till the end, I think it's a very interesting experiment. That's more or less. Maybe we can continue after. Thank you.